Why? Why? Like, why are you here?
Hello and welcome everyone to this edition of Fish Stripes Live. This is the off-season edition. World Series has finished and now we are ready for the off-season. A lot of things to go. Trades, free agents, and just a lot of news to cover. I'm here joined today, first off, with Mr. Isaac Zoot, Kevin, Eli, Alex, and Adam. And we will be joined on later by a special guest, Mr. Aram Lane from Just Baseball. Guys, how are we feeling after that World Series and getting ready for the offseason?
Feel good. I'm excited. A lot of moves went down yesterday. And a fan favorite no longer on the team, but we'll get into that later.
I think we can talk about the World Series very briefly. The World Series was very fun to watch. One of the more fun ones that I've watched in recent years. I think since maybe 2017 one with the Astros and the Dodgers. But a lot of fireworks, a lot of stars. Harper, Altuve, Wheeler,
Nola,
Ryan Stanek, of course.
Pitched like one inning during the whole series, maybe.
A very fun series. Great environments on both sides, in both cities. So it's great. And here's Mr. Aram.
Oh, let's go.
How we doing, everybody?
Welcome.
Doing way better now. We're talking some Ryan Stanek World Series. Aram, I'd love to hear your insight on this World Series and what was definitely a classic one.
Yeah, well, thanks for accommodating me a couple minutes late here. It was fun, man. It was fun. I mean, it's why you play the games, right? I don't think any of us had the Phillies making it. It shows you how you can just get to the postseason. Anything can happen. And now it's easier to get to the postseason. The Phillies were obviously a benefactor of the expanded playoff format. So it gives a little bit of hope. We know what the Marlins have done on multiple occasions in terms of being able to do it with the wild card. But I think it was a really good example of why we expanded the playoffs. It was ironic because in the beginning, we had a lot of pushback on, the teams that got a break, they ended up not playing as well. Maybe this format isn't great. Well, guess what? A team that benefited from the format is now, made it to the World Series that wouldn't have made it there. So I think it really shows that it's worth it to expand the playoffs. And I'm excited to see how it continues to go.
Yeah. And really quick on the Phillies, do you guys see this as a sustained success that they can build off for years to come? Or do you guys see this as maybe just a one-shot thing that they got lucky at the right time?
A little bit of both, I guess you could say, because no one really expected them to beat the Cardinals. I think most of us here had the Cardinals beating the Phillies here, but I mean, they have a really good team when you really start to look at it, and they got deep into their playoff run. Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, that 1-2 punch. Then you have Bryce Harper. He's Bryce Harper, and then Kyle Schwarber just going nuclear. And then their bullpen came in the clutch at the end, I mean, they really held their own, and I think Alex was mentioning this, that you have Sir Anthony Dominguez, and then you have who's the guy that gave up the homer, the Jordan? Jeez.
Probably Alvarado.
Alvarado, yeah. They both they throw hard, man, and they have a pretty good bullpen. And shout out to former Marlins. Brad Hand was in there. Andrew Bellotti was there. And Real Muto. So some former Marlins getting their ring.
It was a good question, Daniel, because I was curious. Maybe Aram can confirm that. I thought that if things didn't go well for them this season or next, they were sort of maybe, en route for a rebuild of some sort, because their farm system isn't fantastic. And they have a lot of money on the books, and they don't have great starting pitching. So I thought maybe if things didn't go well, that was the one weak link between them, the Mets, and the Braves.
Yeah, it's funny now, man, because it shows you how quickly things can change. I think a big reason of why they got to where they are is because of the fact that Bryson Stott in the second half really took that leap. Yeah. Alec Boehm took that leap. And those are two core pieces now that you're looking forward to, continuing to develop. You go out and get Brandon Marsh, a youngster as well, who really started to come into his own in the second half and made some adjustments that looked really good for him and really helped on the defensive side of things. They go getting Edmundo Sosa, who I think is a good bench piece for them, but another young player that has years of control as well. So you look at what they have coming up. You know, that they did trade Logan O'Hoppe, but he's blocked by Real Muto, who clearly made it evident that he's not slowing down anytime soon. And they've got Andrew Painter on the way, South Florida native, who I think will be up a couple months into the season and has frontline upside. And then Mick Abel's not far off either. So you got 2 pitching prospects that could be up and in the fold as well. And then the rest of the core is not going anywhere anytime soon. So I think you can look at what they've built here and say that this could be pretty sustainable. Will they ever capture lightning in a bottle to that degree? I don't know. But this is a team that's always going to be in it. And I think they've kind of made the small moves that they needed to make and now have some of the younger prospects coming up. I'll say declining that Gene Segura option is interesting. $17 million off the books. That would have been $17 million. They have another few chunks here and there that have freed up. Wouldn't be surprised to see them tap into that shortstop market either. They've got some money available.
Yeah.
Did you ever face Painter?
I did not. Too young for me. It's sad.
Yeah, I thought it was a couple of years before. Yeah.
It's sad that we are at that point now where
right.
I'm too old for some of these guys. I would have. We played that school, Calvary Christian, so many times. It's turned into
I know.
Real.
I thought he was a little bit younger than you, but
I was closer to Luke Jackson than Andrew Painter, to put things in perspective.
Yeah, too young for you, unfortunately. Yeah, you're at that point. I was at that point when you were playing. So, anyways, no, World Series. I agree with you guys. Was awesome. It's great to see coming out party for a guy like Jeremy Pena. That guy is fantastic. He was so good on both sides in that World Series. Like some of the plays that he made, saved leads, saved games. Like that guy's going to be really good. So it's cool to see that. It's also cool to see guys that Ronald Archimares and Oz Ocampo, who I know a lot of us just talked to, guys that they were connected to, like Javier Valdez, Urquidy, that they're on that stage and they're succeeding on that stage. I think the Astros proved why they're the better team, though. And as a last for me on this, it's really cool for me, and I'm sure for all of us, to see Lance McCullers Jr. and Aledmys Diaz get a World Series ring. That's pretty cool.
So did Oz Ocampo just have his intro? Did I miss that?
Yeah, it was right before this, straight from Vegas. He checked in, and so he was gracious enough to answer my question, kind of. He was.
Did he answer it though? We'll
get into it, I guess, a little bit more on our site. But it was good to virtually meet him. I'll just leave it at that.
It was horrible. It was horrible. That's all I'll say too. It was bad.
I don't think we learned too much.
No.
Okay.
She's been learning from the Michael Hill Kim Ing already, bro. She knows how to dodge. He knows how to dodge questions really well already. So you can tell.
Perfect.
He's firm already behind Kim Ing.
So he told you they're going to try to make the team better. They're going to upgrade in any way. All options are on the table.
That'd be too specific.
Yeah, that would be way too specific. God forbid.
Yeah. For anybody that's unclear, Oz Ocampo, new assistant general manager, one of 3 AGMs that they now have under Kim Ing. Kim Ing, along with Dan Greeley and Brian Chadden, and now Oz Ocampo, who most of his he's extremely accomplished in terms of being able to, as a scout, as somebody that kind of came to this in a very unconventional route in order to break into baseball, and he distinguished himself by most notably signing a lot of the young pitchers that the Astros ended up riding deep all the way to the World Series. He was very prominently involved with that, and he's somebody that he's just big on intangibles in terms of giving a lot of personal attention to players and individualizing the development that they go through in order to actually have them reach their full potential. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, because I haven't done my full Oz Ocampo dive yet, to be honest. But that's something that's really lacking in this organization, is that individualized approach, the focus on the intangibles. And you also look at what the Astros have done here, and I think this is the latest organization that is going to have all of those cast-offs. Cast-offs negative connotation, but all of those other people that get poached, that ultimately it's like, oh, we want a Rays guy. Oh, we want a Dodgers guy. It's going to be, oh, we want an Astros guy, because most of their players are homegrown. This is a dynasty at this point, no matter how you feel about the organization. Yeah. And they know what they're doing. And I think the next phase is going to be poaching Astros guys or girls or whoever in the organization that's had a piece of this whatsoever of their success. And I think that's a really, really, really interesting thing that I think we're going to see develop soon. And Oz is one of the main targets of someone you'd want to poach from that Astros organization. So there's no way, there's no negative perspective on that one for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
You always got to remember, like, they want these organizations hire guys who are going to be yes men. Like somebody just mentioned that, and they want someone who's going to follow the instructions to a T set out by the ownership group. So, we really that's why we kind of see a lot of these questionable moves at times. It's never really the straightforward right answer because, like, if we can come up with these right answers, so do the executives who have been studying this for longer than we've been alive, right? So it's never always the best answer that they want to be able, the best track that they want to be able to take. It's just the correct answer they have to give according to what maybe Bruce Sherman and the rest of the ownership group wants him to say. So maybe he wanted him to be like quieter, but it's really what he's got to listen to what the ownership says and exactly just that's kind of the path they always have to follow and why our frustration usually comes from for a lot of these like new executives.
Yeah, I want to transition a little bit from some of the, you could say, roster moves that the Marlins didn't make in the past couple days. First off, losing Kevin's favorite player of all time, Luke Williams. Kev, give me a brief synopsis of Mr. Williams' time as a Marlin.
I mean, besides being the Jeopardy king, he was a pretty scrappy utility player. He had his moments, but yeah, I mean, all the good things have to come to an end. He had minor league options. Some team was bound to pick him up, and that was the Dodgers. So wishing him the best. And there you go. More players gone too. We have Holloway, Ho, and Campbell. Yeah, but yeah, I'll miss Luke Williams. He was a good person. We all spoke to him at least once. So wishing him the best. But the main
one I wanted to talk about was Cole Sulser, because that was the one we all had a discussion about privately, just what the Marlins would do with him, just the amount of money that they could be giving him, non-tender hand, giving him, I believe it was 1.2 or something around that.
That's exactly a million.
Okay. So what do you guys see about them waiving Cole Sulser now? He's heading to Arizona as a Diamondback. Does that trade, how do you look at that trade now with one piece already gone, already a year into that? Just how does that even look? Is that Marlins already took the L on that trade?
So for me, getting rid of Sulser was pretty interesting, just in the sense that, he's coming off a pretty terrible 2022, but we were talking about this in our GM chat with Kevin and, Daniel was there too, just about, he had his 2021 with the Baltimore Orioles was, pretty good. He's not a very high velocity pitcher. He tops out. He averages around 92 now this year, but before it was in 93, 94. But, especially with, $1 million, which was about what we were expecting him to receive in arbitration, and compared to $800K being the minimum, it's, $200,000, especially in, this kind of idea is chump change. So to, kind of liquidate someone like that just for nothing is kind of a head scratcher. But, since they did trade him, there is kind of a good idea to be seen. We kind of want to be able to shed some salary and start over with a different prospect potentially. But he's someone I wouldn't want to get rid of outright. But if they got something for him, it's pretty interesting to see. So that's a good idea.
I don't see how it's a loss. Honestly, I mean, you need to make trades like that, especially where they were with the bullpen at the end of last offseason when they made the trade. They needed to do something in the bullpen. Yeah, they waited way too long to do it. That's a different conversation. But they traded a depthier arm. I love Antonio Velez, but they traded a depthier arm and a very far away prospect in Kevin Guerrero for a guy that throws heat in Scott. And then they get Sulser, who does have a good mix of pitches. He just didn't know how to command them this year, which led to his inflated numbers. So you need to make trades like that. I wouldn't see it as a loss. I mean, I just think it's a trade that needed to be made. And it is what it is. But they still have Scott. I like his slider. Not as a closer, but I like him as a later relief guy. So it is what it is. If Scott gets a little bit better command of his fastball, he'll be better for sure. But no, I don't see the trade as a loss. I just see it as one of those trades that you had to make, and it's fine.
Yeah, this is a trade you had to make. I don't know why I was thinking that they would get rid of Sulser, which they did. Yes, his 2021 season was good, but besides that, it wasn't all that crazy. He was moving a little bit around the league. I believe he was with another team when he started, and now with he went to the Orioles. He had a pretty good 2020. That was a shortened season. I don't know how people take that into account, but really good 2021. I was pretty excited to see that the Marlins made a good trade. What it seemed at the time. You get a pretty young guy in Tanner Scott who you could develop as you go with Mel, and then you have Cole Sulser, who is an established veteran in the league. And
yeah, well, he was in a weird spot because he wasn't a stat. He had a legitimately very good season right before coming over. It's just that it was still a short track record, all things considered, for a guy of that age and that stage of his career, and for somebody whose stuff doesn't fit the conventional like shutdown, high leverage relief type of situation. I was somebody that I didn't think it was a bad trade. I just thought it was insufficient for where that bullpen was at that time last year, because they made it pretty much. Actually, Craig Mish got into this a little bit on his new episode of with Locked On Marlins with Peter Pratt about how the Dylan Floro spring training injury last year was something that the team thought was a very big deal in hindsight in terms of like derailing their relief. And I mean, without getting into that, I think you could draw a pretty clear line between Dylan Floro having a setback last spring and with a couple days to go before opening day, the Marlins making this trade to get both Scott and Sulser. And so I wonder if they would have even made this trade if Floro had gone into the year healthy as well. It was just still insufficient. The bullpen was just still really far away from being something that you could trust. As random as bullpens are, it didn't feel like they invested, they prioritized top tier stuff and upside and putting that together. And, the combination that they got was, it was interesting, but they just didn't really give themselves even a chance to put together what would be even an above average unit over there. So now most of these guys are still under control. Even with Sulser gone, most of the guys that were there last year are still under contract this year. Me personally, I'd love to see more substantial changes going out there, but they're in a situation where there's no urgency if they don't want to. If they want to run it back and hope that these guys have better results, maybe, but that would you would hope to see more creativity, and you'd hope to see some sort of more significant investment in order to get the players, it's a very short list of relievers that really move the needle for you, and you hope that they do something in that area to give themselves a better shot.
Yeah, that's why I found it interesting that just 1 year after an injury-riddled, granted disappointing season from Cole Sulser, when they made that trade, they didn't give up much, but they gave up two, decent guys. I found, Velez ended up having a good year this year, but they gave up something. And Cole Sulser was a better arm coming back. Him and Scott Sulser was a better guy, and just let Arizona claim him off waivers just a year after the injury-riddled season was just a little bit surprising in my eyes, especially when if he has a 2021 season next year, he's a big part of your bullpen. Not a closer, but he's big. So I was just surprised by it.
And I'll say this. I mean, you look at it, the end of the season, this guy was injured. He comes back up, he pitches a couple games, and they send him right back down. I mean, you could have kept him up and let him work through his struggles. I mean, it was kind of weird that they would send a veteran down and finish basically the rest of the season down in AAA when, once again, Marlins weren't competing. They had nothing to play for. Could have just kept him up, let him work through his struggles just like they did with Elias Hernandez at the start of the season when they really were in it. But, yeah, he's now with the Diamondbacks, so wishing him the luck.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the 40-man crunch a little bit too. And I think the Marlins look at the dip in velo and let that kind of push them off of him enough. My thing with Sulser is the shape of his fastball is really good. You look at the underlying metrics, even in the low 90s, he's able to get a good amount of swing and miss, and he got a good amount of swing and miss on the fastball. The problem was he had no feel for the changeup, no feel for really his out pitch there, and that was the problem. I mean, he almost never threw it for a strike. But that was probably because of the injury. You start tinkering. You start really, if you're dealing with shoulder issues, also, you're not really going to feel great with your release point. I just would have liked to have seen another year, right? I think it was a very quick yank, especially when you gave up the prospects, but also the compensation pick. And that's what me and Craig and I were going back and forth about when I said, I'm glad they did the trade, but ultimately it hasn't aged well for them whatsoever. I think Scott can still carve out a role for himself, but ultimately it was a trade that was forced to be made because of, I would say, complacency. And I think that's more of what Craig was talking about. And he makes an excellent point there, right? If they were more proactive, they don't have to give up a compensation pick, which ended up being used on Judd Fabian, I believe. They don't have to give up that pick and have their backs against the wall when they could have got players of equal or better talent without having to give up what they gave up.
Yeah, this is exactly why you don't wait and wait and wait and wait and wait to make your moves. I mean, they had to do something. They knew they had to do something, and they probably gave up more than they would have had to if they really saw these guys as part of the future or as part of the team and as part of a winning team. Did they? earlier in the offseason? Probably not. But now that you got to get somebody, and these are the two guys that they select. So, and they gave up probably a little too much, as Aram said. But like I said, they had to do it. They should have done something like that much earlier in the offseason, and hopefully that's what gets fixed through Kim's comments of, we know we can't sit on our hands. It seems that they see the error in their ways, and it seems like they want to correct it, but we'll see what they do here starting tomorrow, right? Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah. And this is just a quick look at Cole Sulcer's run value by pitch. You see 2021, that changeup was elite.
Yep.
To have minus 11 runs, and it totally flipped the script this past year. It was a bad pitch for him. It was that Jorge Alfaro walk-off home run. Pretty sure that was either a hanging slider or a hanging changeup as one of the two.
He also had a Brendan Donovan one, if you guys remember.
Yeah.
Again,
He threw the changeup in the zone 27% of the time. So, I mean, like, it's just not gonna.
That doesn't sound good.
No.
That's a control issue there.
I wanted to bring up some other guys, especially with arbitration, and the Marlins do have some guys. And there's one name I'm looking at, probably Isaac's favorite player of all time, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Brian Anderson. Yeah. His number is exactly $5.2 million. That's a lot of money, especially for the Marlins, for a guy who's not going to be playing 162. Still, who knows even the position. Isaac, give me your case for Brian Anderson and that amount of money.
The case can be made that he's the second best offensive player on the team. The case can be made that he's got 5 slightly above average tools. The case can be made that in 2018, 2019, 2020, he was their best offensive performer. He's young. He's got a hell of an arm. You can put him in right field, the corner, in third base. Put him in left field. He had a crazy play in his first game ever in left field. He's a very dynamic, athletic player who's been here through it all, was even part of that late 2017 team. So he's just got a ton of time with his ball club. And I think it would be a big mistake. Obviously, 5.2 million is a lot for this player. But to me, he's well worth it, because what are you going to do? Have Birdie and Wendell at third base? For what they have on the roster, he's definitely got to stay.
I don't see any world or any realm where he gets that much money in arbitration. I don't think there's any way he wins that case.
It's 5.2 the middle of what he would go in with and what the team would counter.
I don't think he gets that much. With his injury history, there's no way, dude. There's no way he gets that much money. I don't think there's any way.
For sure. I could for sure see something along the lines of that. Yeah. I mean, 5 million, this doesn't come out of anywhere. And my reasoning I will give is that if you look at his, at least the best we can have is look at his ZiPS projections for the next couple of years. Next year, at least, just for his last year in PM control, he's projected to play 110 games and put up 0.8 WAR. So 1 WAR is equal to about $10 million in value. So if you're paying him half of that, you're really, and obviously it's arbitration, so the team is supposed to be able to get a lot of value during that time. But you might as well take advantage of the last year you have of him. If you're not going to fit him at third, he's got a pretty good arm. You can fit him in right. You can kind of twink around with the roster a little bit, and you can worry about that in March and April when the time gets better. But for now, you got to make sure he's on your roster somehow.
The thing is that he's a player that a lot of teams would love to have. And you bring him in. I'm not saying he needs to be there when the Marlins are in the playoffs. But I'm saying is that bring him into spring training next year, and he has a great first half. He's a team that other teams would pay a lot for. They would, I would wait till I wouldn't sell low on him right now at all. He's coming off the worst year of his career, for sure, either this year or last year. And I think if he has a solid first half, he's someone that maybe in the Phillies could look at. He's someone that a lot of teams in the National League could really use. I think he's a very good ball player. I wouldn't.
And as you guys mentioned, he could play basically the corners and third base. So he's a pretty good utility man to have if that's what you're going to consider him moving forward. If the team gets a third baseman or not, but
he just needs to learn how to hit left-handed pitching. For some reason, he's got those crazy reverse splits, and it really
arm strength is there.
I feel like the arm strength. I think his biggest thing is those reverse splits for me. I think it was a weird platoon situation with him and Wendell due to that fact, but I think he should be in spring training as a starting third baseman.
I couldn't believe how bad he looked in the outfield this year, though. I'll be honest, because I always thought he was pretty good out there. I don't know if it was just the inconsistency of playing time, bouncing around, being hurt, whatever it was. But in terms of just some of the worst reads I saw in the big leagues this year, I'll be honest, like it was Brian Anderson. Like he had some of the worst reads I've seen out there. And I don't know if it's focus. I don't know what it is, because this guy's shown us the ability to do so.
Right.
And it's spilled over to third too. Like metrically speaking, he was not great at third either. Yeah. So I've been you could probably dig up some old Locked On Marlins episodes where I'm talking about paying Brian Anderson. I totally hear where you're coming from, but if this team is pinching pennies, he's got to be one of the first casualties now, right? I mean, over $5 million, and you already have this like level of depth where you're going to keep Joey Wendell, I think most likely, right, for around the same amount of money. Yeah, you have now John Birdie emerging as somebody that has to play, right? Like, look at what he did on the base paths in terms of just the F4 value of what he provided, and now you've got LeBlanc kind of factoring in here to some degree. He's obviously not nearly as good as Brian Anderson, but if he's just another guy in this fold, $5 million that the Marlins can invest into the bullpen or somewhere else, I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, you give him a contract, he's half decent, you could trade him. And I think that's the point that you guys made that I think is very fair and makes it a tough decision for them. And really what it boils down to for me is, how confident are we in a Brian Anderson bounce back? Because most teams, they say, oh, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Whatever. We lost $5 million. It is what it is. For the Marlins, it's a big decision to make. And I don't know how confident they are in him bouncing back, and the defensive struggles. I don't know if that helps the case. So I'm very fascinated to see what they do. In a perfect world, you give him the contract and let him bounce back, because everything that Isaac said is true. He's extremely talented. He's extremely talented. He just hasn't been able to put it all together.
Yeah, I don't understand. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No, I was just going to say quickly. He's had the same shoulder or oblique thing how many times? Like,
that's the concern. He's
a third baseman. Like, you saw the arm strength. Yeah, it's good when he's healthy, but he can't keep it up. Like, nothing matters if you can't stay on the field. So nothing else matters. So I would not give him $5 million.
And I was listening to the Locked On episode with Craig today, and he said he did not expect BA back in 2023. I assume you saw that too, Eli, but we'll see what happens. He said he could be right, he could be wrong as usual.
That is Craig's substantial prediction at this stage.
If BA was a big time clubhouse guy, a big glue guy, that then maybe, but and not to say that he isn't. It's just he just kind of beats to his own drum, right? That's fine. But if he was this glue guy in the clubhouse and a big leader, maybe you could justify it a little bit more. But that's not even really the case either. So I think Craig, probably has some insight on that, and I think you probably could prepare for that. But that's money that I don't know. I know people like to be pessimists and say, and I don't blame them. They've been beaten down by this team, this franchise so many times. I do believe that the payroll will be equal, if not slightly more this year, right? And if that's the case, that's $5 million that you're going to be able to allocate directly to the bullpen, which that can get you a decent arm. And that was something they didn't do last year, and I think it'll make a big difference this year, even if they can allocate that towards getting a proven reliever.
You're right. If anybody that is listening to this is expecting the Marlins payroll to be substantially higher than it was this year, then you're mistaken. Because I don't think there's a way that it's going to happen. And if that is true, if that happens, that is true, that the Marlins are going to have a similar payroll. I mean, for other teams, $5 million is nothing. For the Marlins, $5 million is a bit of money, and you can get a quality piece that doesn't have near the injury history as Brian Anderson, and you can fill a need. And as Aram said, they have other pieces even on the roster right now that you can plug in with Birdie, LeBlanc, and others. So I agree with Isaac that Brian Anderson is a good player when he's healthy. Can he stay healthy has always been the question for him. And so far in his career, he has not been able to do it. And if it's me, I don't give that kind of player $5 million.
The emergence of Dela Cruz too, right? I mean, the way he finished the year, come on. No, I'll be honest. Like, this is serious. I'm not banking on him being a regular. Don't get me wrong, but like, he's another outfielder that was competent and that factors in it to some degree. What are you gonna do? Stash him in triple?
But did you see how bad he was in the first half of the season?
Oh, I did. Trust me. I couldn't watch anymore.
He's like Mr. September. Like, he had a great September 2 years ago. He had a great September last year. It's 1 month.
I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying that based on what I think they're going to factor in here, I think they're going to want to get a little bit more of a look at him, and that kind of satisfies another one of those corner outfield bench guys. And I hope not, but that's kind of what I see happening here.
I like what Isaac and I'll say I like what Isaac said about waiting with BA and maybe trading him over at the deadline, because a healthy BA is really good. I mean, 2019, 2018, as Isaac mentioned, you can get some pretty good value for BA. I mean, and there, as Isaac once again mentioned, there are teams that would like him. I know Toronto last year definitely would have used him before Matt Chapman. That's definitely something that's my opinion. I think Brian Anderson would have been a nice option there for Toronto with the need there, but I assume other teams would love to have BA right now on their, if it's a utility man or a nice bench piece, they know, with the 99 percentile in power and arm power. I think a lot of teams would want that. Arm strength.
Can you guys tell me who led the Marlins in home runs and RBIs in 2020?
Ryan Anderson.
It was this guy.
Ryan Anderson.
Yeah.
But something I don't understand that you touched on was that how could his third base defense in particular, the right field routes, I feel like every single Marlin outfielder was so bad out there this year. But the third base defense was really, really bad. And there's a stretch where he was letting every single ball get by him.
It was
what I don't understand. What was it? Him being scared to dive to his right, left, whatever it is. What happened?
I don't know if it was a combination of focus and a little bit of the injury. I think. I mean, something I've learned more and more, and I didn't want to believe it, but the more I've, I guess, just like been able to be around the game even a little bit is how much focus actually factors into defense in a 162 game season. And Castellanos even mentioned it in the playoffs, and it kind of went under the radar, but they're like, yo, how's your defense been better? And he's like, just kind of focusing on playing good defense. It's a long season. Baseball is slow, especially if you're an outfielder, but in general, and slight lapses can really make a big difference when we're talking about outfield jump and all of these things that factor into the analytics. A slightly slower outfield jump is going to affect that. Your outs above average, like things like that are going to matter. But it's been interesting seeing how much that factors in. And you look at Brian Anderson, there was times where he legitimately looked disinterested. Like, I'll be honest. I mean, I know a little bit of that is just kind of the way he is. Like, that's just kind of the way he carries himself. But when he wasn't getting consistent playing time, even when he was healthy, there did seem to be like a level of a disinterested Brian Anderson. And I think even if he's going to get all the way back, I think it's going to happen somewhere else. I think a change of scenery at this point is probably needed.
I think Isaac doesn't want Jeff Hendricks to return to the Marlins. I think that's what he's telling us.
One thing I will say about BA is that, I mean, the dude is about to put up 10 WAR before he hits free agency. If you put up that amount, that's like pretty good. Like that's like a pretty decent threshold. I think we're like severely underestimating just how pretty good this guy's been during his time during like team control, right? So he's definitely not getting non-tenured, but for sure, if he's going to be moved, it'll be via trade and it'll get something pretty decent back for him. But for sure, he's not getting non-tenure. You don't non-tenure a guy like Brian.
I hope you're right, Adam.
I would argue $5 million is like, especially for arbitration, it's not a huge amount. So
it's the Marlins, though. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to tender him a contract, they got to be pretty sure that there's going to be a market for him. And I think if there obviously wasn't a market for him too much last year. I think if there was, he probably would have been gone. I don't know. I do wonder. I think you're right. Like, again, any other team, you give them the contract, no brainer, and you figure it out later. But I'm very interested to see how they handle it. Should be interesting.
Yeah. The next guy I wanted to bring up, we could talk about this guy very quickly before we get into free agents and all that good stuff. Another guy who could be a non-tenure candidate is Mr. Tanner Scott. His arbitration tender. You know what? Tanner Scott, his number's around $3 million. Is that too much, too little? What are you guys?
If they non-tender him too, then no, I think he's a guarantee to be on the team next year.
He will be. He will be there.
There was a pretty extended stretch where he was actually great for them. Obviously, there was a lot of inconsistency around that, but he does still have how many? Does he have 2 more years of control?
Yeah.
He has 1 more year. Yeah, 2 total. So 1 more even after this upcoming year. Just with the upside with him, that was why they got him in the first place. They got him coming off even a worse year in 2021, thinking that the best version of himself could be pretty awesome. And we briefly saw that last year. So, yeah, I think he's sticking around. I don't think that's that much of a borderline case. It's just that you certainly don't want to go into next year with him slated as the closer. You want to certainly surround him with guys that are more consistent at the very least.
I think all they need to do is just move Mel Stoudemire to the bullpen and have him talk to Tanner before he comes into the game instead of letting Tanner go off the rails and then having him come out.
That was the top moment in the season.
When he threw 11 straight strikes after walking the bags loaded against the Rockies.
11 straight walks. Or not walks, balls.
No, and then after Mel came out, it was 11 straight strikes.
Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is Eli's list for free agency. We want to bring this up. He had a pretty you could say viral or talked about list over the past couple days. I really want to see this and get everyone's opinion on the matter, and maybe
Don't
other
get too
anything that
aroused,
you like,
Marlins
or
fans.
not like.
I'm not gonna lie, I disagree with the Pablo trade.
This
Why?
is
The
the
one.
second year where I have done envisioned making all the roster moves, free agent signings, trades, and other 40-man roster minutia. And I remember last year I kind of went overboard with a successful scenario. I think this one is kind of within reason, envisioning the situation where payroll goes up, where they focus on certainly the offense and up the middle offense, certainly improve the bullpen, and then make a few creative trades. And I think the one move that, in my mind, we all expect them to trade starting pitching in order to address other needs on the team. And I took it to a level where you trade so much that you also shouldn't be afraid to take a flyer on some free agents like Sean Manaea, somebody that is
I like
had
that
a
one.
pretty good history prior to this past year and could just be a small tweak away from figuring things out again, because they are in this weird spot where there's that temptation to trade starting pitching, but also in the organization right now with Meyer coming back from Tommy John, with Sixto being a total question mark, with Yuri coming fast, but probably not going to be a consideration for opening day, where you could get into a situation where the depth for 2023 is a little thin if you make the trades that you need to for offense. So this is a tricky needle to thread for this Marlins team. I think that's what that's kind of the bottom line that we all accept going into this offseason, that if they want to make the team significantly better without mortgaging their entire future and without setting an unreasonable expectation for total spending, there's only so many ways to do it. And so this is what I came up with in that regard.
Well, I automatically approve of everything that's on here because of the second to last thing that's there with Troy and Josh.
I knew you were gonna say that.
So I automatically approve it. I also really like the formatting of the trade for Brian Reynolds. I think that's fair. An arm, like we talked about Brian De La Cruz, maybe they could get more out of him. And then Khalil with Khalil, the Marlins have so many. I mean, Khalil's a talented player when he has his head right. The Marlins have so many of these young talented middle infielders in the minor leagues that, Khalil, is it a loss because of, the draft pick that you spent on him and the money that you gave him? Yeah, of course. But you have to give up value to get a player like this. So I think that's a good formatting for that trade. Will the Marlins miss Khalil long term? Maybe, but they have other guys that can definitely step in and do similar things that they're expecting Khalil to do. So I like this list mostly. I also like the Luzardo extension. I think he will be good as long as he can remain healthy as well.
Yeah, I like that.
So, I think this list is pretty good. They do have stuff to do on the back end of the roster if they want to keep around some of these Rule 5 eligible guys that we always talk about, including Simpson and King. So, yeah, I think this is definitely a solid list. And yeah, I know Navi, MD will get there eventually, but he has no velo. So I see why Eli put King and Simpson over him. So, but yeah, I like this. I like this list for sure.
I want to hear about your opinion on Brooks Lee and adding him to that, Eli.
I love that trade.
That's a name that the Marlins could have got.
No, you love it because it's Brooks Lee, but he's talking
No,
about
I love it because it's Jorge Polanco.
Oh, well, no, I like Jorge Polanco. Just Brooks Lee, I don't think they'll move him.
I love that trade.
Just because, Arm, you could give your opinion on this. I think we're not far away from reaching a stage. If Brooks continues on the trajectory that he had last summer, like he could reach a point where he's firmly established as one of the very best shortstop prospects in baseball, and could reach a point where he's not available in any trade. So this is kind of the small window to, I think in a lot of our opinions, to right a wrong and pick a guy that they should have drafted originally coming out just a few months ago. That's why I put him in there for that particular reason, and knowing just the timing of it. I don't know if it's realistic, to be honest. That's why this is the kind of the optimistic take on a trade as to whether they'd be willing to, if you're the Twins in that respect, give up Polanco and one of your very best prospects for Pablo and some other important major league role players. That's probably the one where, like, putting in there, I'm like, is that probably setting things a little unrealistic? Maybe, but this is this is ideally what you want in terms of improving the major league team and also looking out for the future and getting some interesting flyers for the farm system, and it's not entirely replacing all the prospect talent you're sending out, but it's tough. It is tough to come up with something like this, considering the state of the organization.
Yeah. The Brooks Lee conversation, that one wears at me a little bit. That was one of those spots where I really felt pretty confident that they were gonna go with Brooks Lee there, and we don't need to rehash that totally. But just to put things in perspective here, before the draft happened, I had the loose outline of our top 100 list because I didn't want to let the spot in which the player was selected influence where I put them in the rankings. And then once I finally finalized the top 100, it was a few weeks into them actually being able to play. So I got a little bit more of a look. So I bumped some guys a little bit more. But even going into the draft, Ed Brooks Lee at 60 in the top 100, and Jacob Berry was not in the top 100. Again, things could change. That was just the way I looked at it. That's the way I saw it. And that, on my big board, that's the way it was. Brooks Lee's now, by the time we put the top 100 out with what he showed, both power and bat to ball wise and athleticism wise, and I think there was a little bit of concern with the medicals. I think he really kind of put that to bed pretty quickly. Brooks Lee's our 48th ranked prospect in baseball now, and I think he's going to keep rising. So that was a tough one because I think that's one that they'll definitely regret. Doesn't mean Jacob Berry won't be a good player, but I think especially with where they're at, they do have some good middle infield prospects, but a lot of them are far off. A lot of them have a lot of things that they still need to work out. I just saw Jose Salas and the Arizona Fall League. He's still a long ways away. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen them go with the shortstop there, without a doubt. So I'm interested to see how they satisfy that position because they want to compete, right? They want to get better in the next year or two. And most of their shortstop prospects aren't getting there in a year or two. I would say Naz Nunez has the best bet to get there first, which, by the way, why was he not in the Fall League? This guy's big league ready with the glove right now. The bat started to shine through a little bit. Even if he's a 710, if he's a 700 OPS guy, he will be a multiple win player with the glove and the speed. For whatever reason, he's not in the Arizona Fall League. And Jose Salas is, who didn't really look as comfortable as his teammates, and he was one of the younger guys there.
I thought Nassim had already played in the Arizona Fall League in previous years. No, I guess not. Oh, then I'm with you on that. Nassim should have been there over Salas. Salas is so young to be there.
He should have been there over Salas, who's the second or third youngest guy there that's playing.
And the other guys, it's Jackson Merrill and Jason Dominguez and guys like that. Salas is a good young player, but he's not there.
I don't have an issue with having Salas there. I mean, you technically want your best guys, and I wouldn't necessarily say it is Nunez. I know you guys are high on him, and I like him too, and I agree with you. That you say he's probably going to be a 1.5 or 2 win guy just by his glove alone. I agree with you. But I feel like you do definitely want to go for who's going to have the higher upside, and I do, I'm not super high on Jose in general, but of all the players that we do have in our system, I do believe he is the best bet to maybe accrue the most value of any middle infield that we do have. So I think that's the rationale the organization went with, and I think it's just potential future overall value over really what's really guaranteed with what you're getting with Nassim. I just think the upside offensively is higher with Jose, and that's really why they went with him instead of Nassim.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear you on that for sure, but you could send him to the Fall League next year or potentially the year after that. The big thing about the Fall League is it's for the guys that are knocking on the door or in that transitional phase, or if they're a blue chipper like Jordan Walker, Mason Wynn, you just want to get those guys more reps. I understand they wanted to get Salas more reps, and I think that's where you're right 100% is okay, get one of your highest upside position player prospects more reps, but it would have been nice to just see Nunez in that setting and just see what you got here a little bit, right? And just have a little bit more of an understanding of where he can factor in. And I know he's not the long-term answer, but he could end up being exactly what you're getting from Miggy Rowe in a lot of ways defensively and give you a little bit more dynamic athleticism in the short term. I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more of what they have, but I 100% hear you, man, because Salas is the guy that they're really hoping will take that leap and be that top 100 guy for them position player-wise, which we know they've been desperately searching for. I will say I think we've jumped off, and I'm guilty of it too, jumped off the Khalil Watson ship a little bit too quickly. He's a kid. There's still a great chance he can mature. He looked a lot better at the end of the year. Chase rates way down, whiff rates way down. Obviously didn't get into any more trouble down the stretch. He's so talented. There's been much more troubled players in terms of, controversy and issues and getting suspended and dealing with problems. There's been much more troubled players that have worked it out, matured, and found their way to the big leagues and had success. Khalil Watson is extremely talented. I don't know if I'd want to trade him just yet. I like all of the trades that Eli put together there, but man, I want to see what he can do at least for a few months next year and then go from there. Maybe he needs to change the scenery at that point. But if he comes out swinging next year, everyone's going to forget. Everyone's going to forget what happened last year. It's just how things work.
Yep.
I mean, he came out swinging this year, and look what happened. He got adjusted to, and then he flew off the handle. So, I fear it. I honestly fear it happening again. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he gets it figured out because he's a kid, like you said. But like I said, the Marlins have other middle infield talent that they can get a lot out of. Like Yiddy Capay is number one on my list. The more that you have, the better off you are, right? Especially with these guys that you can move positions. You can move Khalil a position. You can move Yiddy Capay to third base. You can move Jose Salas to third base. Like, you're going to get value out of those players in some regard. You have to give something up, though. I mean, you're going to have to give something up. And Trevor Rogers and whoever the other guy was in Eli's trade is
Dela Cruz.
They want a long-term piece like that. So I think Khalil can be good, but I still think he has a lot to figure out. With strikeout rate, mindset, there's things to figure out there. So, is the attitude thing the only thing? No, but there's other things there that he needs to figure out, and maybe the change of scenery, like you said, will allow him to do that with a different team. So, I like that trade, but that's me.
Speaking of third base, Brian, when we were talking about Brian Anderson, mentioning LeBlanc and Wendell, not one of us mentioned Jordan Groshans, and I found that pretty interesting. Just given the fact that he did make his debut and he didn't look horrible out there, so I thought that was a name worth mentioning a little bit. But the one trade I didn't like from Eli's list was Gerard Encarnacion. You keep that guy, especially for
I don't
Joseph
get it.
Sheffield.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't
I mean,
trade
what would
Gerard
it be? They don't keep-
Oh,
He's probably got
that was at
some
the bottom with Justice
But for
Sheffield.
Justice Sheffield,
Yeah, what the
don't-
hell, man?
Justice Sheffield, go back to 2020. He showed some things at the big league level,
Yeah.
just like Gerard, one more option year. And in this scenario, if you're going to go out there and add to your outfield, I don't know if Gerard is going to play very much in the big leagues for the Marlins. Whereas in this scenario, if you're cleaning out some of your other rotation pieces, then if you get something right with Sheffield during spring training, then maybe he's your 6th or 7th starter during the year and contributes that way. I'm not a huge believer in Gerard. I love them. He was awesome in the minor leagues this year. The batted ball quality is pretty awesome. But when you see just how much swing and miss there was in the big leagues this year, even over a small sample, that raised a pretty big red flag for a guy that's young, but not that young. He just turned 25.
Holy shit.
You need to make decisions on some of these corner outfielders. So in this scenario with Brian Dela Cruz, I'm selling high on him. As much joy as he has brought to us, if he's going to be involved in a deal to bring in an obvious upgrade, then you do it. And then it's sorting out that cluster of players between Burdick and Blade and Jesus Sanchez and Gerard Encarnacion. One of those guys is going to get traded in any universe. They're just a redundant type of player. And I want to, with guys like Blade and Burdick and Sanchez, I'm not sold on any of them, but I think to varying degrees, I can see a scenario where they do take a significant step forward next year. So I don't want to quit on, certainly not Blade and Burdick at this stage where they still have multiple options remaining. It's kind of splitting hairs though with all these guys, considering what we saw from them last year at the major league level.
With Encarnacion, you're talking about a 1.5 tool player. He has amazing power and a good arm. He can't run routes in the outfield. The arm is good, it's not always accurate. So he's like a 1.5 to 2 player, period. Like, the power is great, as Eli said. The arm is good, but what good is your arm if you can't run routes in the outfield? It's no good. He's future for him. He's the first baseman, and who knows what his defense is going to do there. He literally started to learn the position not too long ago. So, I see him as like a more of a bench piece than a starting player on a good team. So, yes, the power is definitely impressive, but if you can't get to the ball more often than not, then it doesn't matter. So he's expendable in my opinion as well. And I like Justice Sheffield too. So I like that as well. I like most of these. I think they're all good. Most of them are good.
Isn't Justin Sheffield a starter, or was he?
He was, yes.
He's a
this
reliever
past
now?
year, he was stuck at AAA all year, and he struggled a lot when he was down there this past season.
Steve Cishek going to retire?
He's uncommittal about it. We'll see.
He finish his career
I
off.
want to hear Eli's rationale to Jose Abreu and getting someone who's double Kevin's age. Maybe
I think this is pretty simple.
I heard he just wants to stay in Chicago. That there's like really no that he has like
no. He wants to leave. This is the last thing I saw.
No, I heard
there are conflicting reports on that in terms of whether they actually want to bring him back at the price he's going to command when they already have controllable first baseman types.
They shouldn't.
Yeah. So White Sox shouldn't let him go. It wouldn't make any sense.
No, I don't know why they need to figure out what they would do, because Andrew Vaughn can't be in the outfield, right? So that's a big problem for them. Is he was one of the worst defensive outfielders. He got hurt multiple times out there. He needs to not play the outfield. His bat is great. I would like to see him at first. There's been conflicting reports, and I know another one recently was that there's a 0% chance that Abreu stays. So I have no idea what the deal is there. I can understand their justification though, because they have a logjam, right? I mean, between what they were doing with Vaughn, Gavin Sheets, those guys combined to be legitimately the worst outfielders in baseball, and both hit pretty well. So I think they'd want to get those guys maybe at first. You got to get Eloy potentially in the DH spot because he gets hurt all the time. So they've got a lot of things to figure out. Abreu seems like a great fit. I don't know what the price would be, but I'd argue that he was as good as ever last year. Did he produce as many home runs? No, but he was actually way more complete of a hitter. And I don't think the dip in power was a sign of aging. I thought it was more of a sign of just chasing more consistency. I think the exit velos were on par. Everything else was on par. His chase rates were low. He was walking as much as ever. I think he walked actually more than ever. This is exactly what the Marlins need, right? I don't expect them to spend money, but this is one of the attainable options. I know people talk about Rizzo, bringing him home or whatever. I think Rizzo's going to finally want his bag. He has never gotten that multi-year big-time contract. This could be his retirement contract. Abreu, I don't see anybody else offering him more than 2 years. So that could be one of the surprise, the shocker moves for the Marlins. Obviously, he's Cuban. Makes a lot of sense. A little bit closer to home. I think he would help the Marlins. He'd be the best hitter the Marlins have had in a very long time.
Like I mentioned, when he was coming over from Cuba, he was an option for them internationally.
They were interested.
They were very interested. So that would be a good reunion.
Yeah, and Abreu was a very consistent hitter. So, 2020 MVP. However you guys take that into account, but Abreu was really damn good, and he would be pretty. Yeah,
lowest strikeout rate of his career last year. Lowest strikeout rate of his career, second highest walk rate of his career. So best K to BB rate.
You would lose a little defense there, but to get some offense, you got to.
They had Gary Cooper at first base. I don't think.
But I'm pretty sure
that's another non-tender guy. If you want to bring him up.
No, he's going to be tendered a contract. There's not much drama there.
One last point on Gerard, by the way. Eli alluded to the whiff rates. The big reason why I just don't, and I want him to succeed. I've heard nothing but great things about him. He was, a favorite in Pensacola and in Jacksonville. Everybody was always rooting for him. I think you guys saw the videos of everyone going nuts when he hit the grand slam. But a big reason why I think he's just not going to be able to put it all together is he's just so long to the baseball, and he really struggled against velo. That's why he hit lefties so well in the minors, as most lefties are softer throwing in the minors. But in general, lefties and righties in the minor leagues this year and in the majors against pitchers 94 miles an hour and above, hit 190, 264, 329. So it's a 593 OPS with a 44% K rate. That's like the average fastball velocity at this point. So, it's going to be hard to succeed that way.
Yeah. Before we get to predictions and predicting free agency and all that, I wanted to ask you, Arm, now that we have you, I want to hear about some cards, some cards that we could go and invest in. Some guys you're looking at that, looking into the future. Give us some details. Give us some cards you're looking at. Some players that I wish I could have gone that Jeremy Pena train a little earlier, but.
No, so I'm in liquidation mode right now. I got rent to pay, and thank goodness Jeremy Pena had that MVP, World Series MVP run, and I listed the cards immediately. But that was a guy I really liked going into the season, and that was one that I was really pounding the tables as a pickup. I haven't fully transitioned into purchase mode because I'm liquidating in some ways, but I would say, some of my favorites moving forward, Jackson Merrill doesn't have an autograph, Padres shortstop prospect, but this guy's a stud, absolute stud. Watched him in the fall league up close. Plus power potential. He can run. He continues to get more physical. He's added a lot of strength. Just getting his base cards, I think, will go up a lot in value. I even got to talk to him in the fall league. I forgot he was 19 when I was talking to him. A really, really impressive dude there. Owen Casey is another one that I just feel like doesn't get enough love. This guy hit a ball 114 miles an hour this year. He put up above average numbers as a 19-year-old in high A. Everyone loves Kevin Alcantara, who is the same age, who played in low A and put up basically similar numbers. I love Alcantara too, but Owen Casey is a guy that's on the cusp, I think, of really exploding offensively. And then hometown kid Tristan Casas. He's going to be the first baseman for them next year in the Red Sox. Combination of elite power, really good feel to hit. He's going to get on base at a high clip. Everyday first baseman for one of the more well-supported teams in baseball. I think Casas could easily become a very, very popular card choice out there for sure.
Does Merrill? Do you know if Merrill has an auto in the new Bowman or no?
Not that I know of yet, which is crazy because he would be highly coveted. He would be highly coveted. He's a freaking stud.
Yeah, one that Aram didn't mention is Churio, Jackson Churio.
Yeah, he's already too expensive for me.
He is.
Yeah, I think he's really good, but
his auto comes out in November.
That's gonna be madness.
One that nobody mentioned that is Marlins related and that his cards are very cheap still is Daxton Fulton. So go buy Daxton cards. That is my suggestion.
I mean, I'm in. I think he's got as high a ceiling as anybody really. Not named Yuri. If you really look at what he's been able to do, what he did in Double-A, what that breaking ball is. The built-in deception is what's kind of, I teeter because the fastball shape isn't great, but he still gets enough whiffs on it. And I think he might just be one of those built-in deception guys that gets by with, not the best shape on the fastball. If that's the case, changeup already looks like it's coming along. Fulton, you could really argue Fulton's got a much higher ceiling than Jake Eater. I know Jake Eater did it already, in Double-A and really impressed. But if you ask me, who could ultimately the Marlins end up regret trading more, I think it would be Dax Fulton if he reaches his potential. And, we know the Marlins, that's the one thing they do well. So why not hold on to the guy that has more potential if you're good at, helping your pitchers reach their potential? Whereas Jake Eater, I think what we saw is what you're going to get, which is really good. But, I think it's a little bit more limited.
As a final on this topic, Danny, I want to ask Aram a question because Yuri, you mentioned him just now. If he's in Bowman, what is like the pull value of it as a raw card for his base? Let's just say base auto.
People hate pitchers, so people hate investing in pitchers, and that's the interesting thing about it. I still think people would be paying right away $7,500 for his autograph. I really do, which is crazy for a pitcher. I mean, look at even Grayson Rodriguez is not that expensive, but Yuri has a chance to be generational, and I was buying Sandy Alcantara autographs 2 years ago for like $8.
Wow.
These Bowman Chrome autos are going for $8. People don't want pitchers until they're the best.
You can get a Dax auto. Dax auto right now you could get for like that price, like $9, $10.
It's unbelievable.
Crazy.
I have a Dax numbered one. I think it costs me less than $5. I'll say that.
We gotta buy the refractors.
Hold it.
I bought ND. I bought a couple guys.
Eli, I think it's that time of the show. We're gonna have a little fun prediction coming up for free agency.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
So we had one for the World Series. This is going to be the only one for the off season. And for this one, I wanted to make it kind of special and have some fun with it. So for this one, I'm going to just need two predictions. How many signings do the Marlins make, and what player gets the largest contract from the Marlins? So an example would be Marlins make 4 signings. Largest contract is Anthony Rizzo. Anthony Rizzo gets the largest contract from the Marlins.
So we're basically predicting who the Marlins will sign. One player the Marlins will sign.
Basically, you can have that there. Just name the player that you think will get the largest contract from the Marlins. Kevin, you're leading off.
Okay. I think they'll make 3 moves. And I think the largest contract they'll give to is Jose Abreu. I believe they'll get him. Eli, after Eli's explanation, I'm pretty hooked on Jose Abreu.
All right. Adam.
So I mentioned my signing on Kevin's show, but I think they'll make 4 free agent signings this year, just low-key ones. But I think they might make one splash, and the one I thought about was Michael Conforto. I know you guys were against it, but we'll see and shot in the dark and see what happens this offseason with him.
All right, Alex.
Man, I have no idea on this, but I will say they make 3 signings as well. I really don't think they're going to spend a ton of money. I really don't. I just don't see the huge signing that everybody wants happening. I'll just put a shot in the dark. I'll say Jake Marisnick, free agent. That's their biggest signing. There you go. I really don't see them.
What?
Really
You can't be
don't.
this low.
I don't think they're spending money. I don't.
You
I
can't
really
be
don't.
this low on their offseason.
Well, I just don't see them. I just don't see them opening wallets. I really don't see them opening
He
wallets.
killed the fish in that series against the Pirates.
Jake Marisnick is a minor league deal.
I don't see it. Like I just see them signing very, very low. I see them going very low on the totem pole and signing lower end guys. Is my
I
opinion.
left my closet open like a capital. Sorry about
Mr.
that.
Isaac.
I think they make 2 free agent signings. I'm totally with Alex. I think their biggest deal would be signing David Robertson to a 1-year, $3 million deal.
That's not even.
I could not be more serious.
Eli.
I believe it.
3 major league free agent signings. I also think that the biggest expenditure will be on the bullpen. I'll go with Robert Suarez, formerly of the Padres.
Shout out Robert Suarez.
That's going to be a multi-year deal. That's going to be something substantial, maybe like 3 years and
No
18
way.
million, something like that.
Wow.
Oh, actually, yeah, I like Swear. They're not going to give him. Yeah, we'll see.
And our guest, Aram. How many signings and what player gets the largest deal?
Oh man. Yeah, I think the biggest acquisition definitely comes via trade. So I'm gonna say 3 signings, and the biggest signing is Chris Martin.
The reliever. That sucks.
He's really good though.
Oh,
We're
Lewis brought that up.
we're the
Lewis is a
same.
big fan of Chris Martin as well.
He's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
We're in the same boat. So yeah.
Oh, and for yours truly, I'll make it short and sweet. 3 signings, largest contract, Brandon Drury.
Okay.
Okay.
He was looking at me.
Dude,
That name was looking at me on the list. I don't hate that. Versatility. Can play all over. You can swing it a little bit.
I don't think it'll cost too much. I don't think it'll be.
I like Josh Bell. Yeah,
I was
they're
gonna
go for San
say
Diego
Bell,
Padre
but-
first baseman. I like Josh Bell. Wow.
I was gonna
Alright.
mention Bell, but I want a little bigger.
And with that, we'll end it with Greg. Jake Marisnick is solid.
I like Jake Marisnick, man. Bring him home. Let's bring him home.
He
There you
had
go.
like 4 home runs in one series against the Marlins.
Dude, that was like
Yeah.
his first home of
He
the
can't hurt you if
season.
he's with you. Let's go.
What-
Jake
what's-
Marisnick,
what's-
that's the signing.
What's Matt Dominguez up to?
Shout out Matt
Nice
Dominguez.
college.
Who knows?
And with that,
Oh, man.
the Marlins,
For Carlos Lee, man. No, what a bullshit.
the off-season stream, getting everything ready. We'll have more coverage, more news, everything as everything unfolds tomorrow. For myself, Daniel, for Isaac, Kevin, Eli, Alex, Adam, for Lewis, who you saw doing cardio earlier in the stream, for Mr. Aram Lane. This is Fish Stripes Live. Always go fish.
We gotta end it off right. We gotta